The water beneath the old bridge ran slow, thick, and red with iron sediment, as if stained by the whispers of a long-forgotten tragedy. Drenched from head to toe, Detective Maren Voss gripped the weathered handrail, her breath sharp and uneven. Her boots squelched against the mud-slicked stones, but she didn't move. She couldn't, not when her flashlight beam flickered across the thing half buried in the riverbank. It was a child's backpack. Moss-covered and torn but unmistakably vintage. Faded patches of cartoon astronauts still clung to the fabric. And just below it, jutting from the soil, the corner of a laminated name tag peeked out. Maren crouched slowly, her gloved fingers trembling as she wiped away the grime. "No," she breathed. The name was still legible. Elsa Voss. Her daughter. The girl who had vanished exactly 23 years ago, along with an entire schoolhouse of children from Clearwater Academy, deep in the Appalachian forest. A place that didn't even show up on some maps anymore. A place that had become nothing but myth, cautionary tale, and trauma. Maren had buried this case. Buried it because it had buried her. She was 28 when it happened. Now, 51, she had spent half her life pretending she was okay. She wasn't okay. She hadn't come here looking for closure. Not really. She had returned to Red Hollow on a whim, or maybe it was guilt. The rumors had begun surfacing again. Old ones. Wild ones. Someone claiming to have seen a child matching Elsa's description near the river trail last month. Maren had come to confirm the nonsense. She hadn't expected this. Behind her, a twig snapped. She turned, flashlight beam slicing through the darkness of the trees. Nothing. Only the rhythmic dripping of rain from the branches. But her instincts flared, ancient and immediate. She wasn't alone. She took a slow step back, eyes darting between the trail and the riverbank. Her hand moved to the sidearm on her belt. Then a voice, soft and cracked, like dry leaves in wind. "You shouldn't have come here, Maren." Her blood ran cold. That voice, impossible. It had been over 2 decades, but she would know that voice anywhere. Elias Creed. The teacher. The man who vanished with her daughter and the entire class. The man suspected. Hated. Haunted. Declared dead. But never found. She turned, flashlight darting in every direction, but the woods were silent again. She called out, "Creed? Where are you?" Her voice bounced off the trees, brittle and desperate. "Where are the children?" No reply. Only the sound of the river and the slow, unmistakable rustle of footsteps retreating into the forest. The next morning, the town of Red Hollow woke to a mist that rolled in like a tide from the forest, shrouding everything in pale gray. It was the kind of fog that swallowed sound and memory, the kind the old-timers swore meant something was coming. Detective Maren Voss stood in front of the old Clearwater Academy building, or what was left of it. The structure had been condemned decades ago, but the bones remained. Moss-covered stone walls, the sagging skeleton of a bell tower, and ivy that crawled like veins across rotting wood. A rusted sign still clung to one post by a single bolt. Clearwater Academy, ST 1961. This place had once been alive. She could almost hear the echoes, children laughing, lockers slamming, the bell ringing. Now only the crows and wind kept it company. Maren stepped over the police tape she herself had requested be placed here years ago. The case had long since gone cold, officially marked unresolved. The town had moved on, at least they pretended to. But for the parents who had lost everything, for Maren, the wound had never closed. She was here for a reason. That backpack by the river. Her daughter's name. The voice in the dark. She wasn't imagining it. And something told her this place still held answers. Her boots crunched on broken glass as she stepped through the warped doorway. Inside, the classroom walls were discolored, peeling. Nature had begun reclaiming it, ferns pushing up through cracks in the floor, roots weaving their way through the chalkboard. But despite the decay, it was unmistakably a classroom. Desks were still bolted in rows. Textbooks, swollen with mold, lay scattered across the floor. The chalkboard still bore the faint white dust of a lesson, fractions. Maren's chest tightened. She walked to the back of the room and sat slowly in the corner chair. Elsa used to sit here. Row 3. Seat 2. Always liked to be close enough to the front to hear, but far enough back not to be called on. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was worn from decades of use. A class picture. 22 children, smiling in their crisp uniforms. A man stood behind them. Clean-shaven. Tie perfectly straight. Mr. Elias Creed. People had trusted him. The town had adored him. A young teacher, barely 30, with a warm smile and endless patience. Maren remembered thinking how lucky Elsa was to be in his class. Until that day. 22 students, one teacher, one school trip to the river canyon, and then silence. No bodies. No survivors. Just a missing bus and a town that would never be the same. Marin clenched her jaw and stood. She wasn't here to remember. She was here to investigate. She pulled out a small flashlight and turned toward the back hall. The light flickered across a row of lockers, most rusted shut. But one, number 17, was slightly ajar. Elsa's locker. She hesitated before pulling it open. Inside were remnants that stopped her breath. An old notebook, the cover half torn, and a beaded bracelet made of colored stones. Elsa had made it for her birthday. Marin had given it back to her the next day, saying she should keep it for luck. The sight of it now nearly undid her. She took the bracelet gently in her hand and stepped back. Her phone buzzed. It was Sheriff Nolan Mays. She answered quickly. "Nolan." "Marin," came the gruff voice. "I heard you were back in town. You're not going back into that school, are you?" "I already did," she said. A sigh on the other end. "You know it's not safe. That place should have been demolished years ago." "That's exactly why I'm here," she replied. "Something's been left behind. Something important." Pause. "What did you find?" She hesitated. Elsa's backpack. In the mud near the old bridge. Name tag still intact. A long silence followed. Then, "Are you sure?" "Positive. I've already sent it for DNA testing. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but someone planted it?" Nolan said. "Or someone never left," she whispered. Another pause, longer this time. "I'll meet you at the station in an hour," Nolan finally said. "Bring what you found. But Marin, be careful. If this is real, if someone's stirring this up again, it could mean trouble." "Trouble's already here," she replied before hanging up. She tucked the bracelet and notebook into an evidence bag and made her way back through the ruined hall. But before she could reach the front doors, a faint sound made her freeze. Ding. She turned sharply. Ding. The bell. The school bell. It hadn't rung in over 20 years. She turned toward the front of the school, heart pounding. The old brass bell hung from the tower, rusted and still. And yet the sound rang again. Ding. A hollow, echoing chime. Not natural. Not mechanical. Almost deliberate. She ran outside, stepping back to get a clear view of the bell tower. But no one was there. Just fog. Trees. Silence. But she knew what she'd heard. The bell had rung. And something, wanted her to know that the past was not done with her. Not yet. By the time Detective Marin Voss arrived at the Red Hollow Sheriff Station, the rain had turned to a slow drizzle, clinging to her coat like secrets that wouldn't wash off. The station was just as she remembered it, aged, boxy, with paint peeling from the eaves and ivy creeping across the back wall. A large metal sign hung above the entrance. Red Hollow Sheriff's Office, St. 1938. She pushed through the door. The scent of old coffee, gun oil, and pine cleaner hit her instantly. Time had passed, but inside these walls, it felt like it never moved at all. Sheriff Nolan Mays looked up from behind his cluttered desk. His salt and pepper hair was thinner now, his frame stiffer, but his eyes were still sharp. "Marin," he said, standing up. "You look like hell." "Good to see you too," she replied with a faint smile. "Sit." He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Tell me everything." Marin dropped the evidence bag on the desk. "I found this at the riverbank, under the old bridge near Copper Creek Trail." Nolan examined the bag, his expression tightening. "Elsa's bracelet. And this." She handed him the photograph. "It's the class picture. The same one from the official records." Nolan studied it. "What am I supposed to see?" Marin leaned forward. "Look closely at Crete." His hand, on Elsa's shoulder. The sheriff squinted. "He's just standing behind her." "Now look again," his other hand. "It's reaching into his coat." Nolan frowned. "That could be anything." "Could be," Marin said. "But I think it's a remote. Or a switch. Something mechanical." Nolan set the photo down. "You think he triggered something that day? A signal? From inside the picture frame?" "I think nothing about this disappearance was random." The sheriff sighed. "We've gone over this, Marin. 22 kids and a teacher vanish without a trace? No vehicle recovered. No ransom. No witnesses. It didn't make sense then and it doesn't now. But what if someone made it make sense? What if they built the mystery that way? If someone wanted it to be unsolvable?" Nolan rubbed his temples. "You're spiraling." She reached into her coat again. "I heard the bell." He looked up. "What?" "At the school." The bell rang, Nolan. "Impossible." That bell hasn't rung since '99. The mechanism rusted out. It rang. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words pressing against the air. Then Nolan stood. Come on. Where? You need to see something. Something I've never shown anyone. She followed him down the hallway, past the holding cells and file storage rooms, until he stopped in front of a locked metal cabinet marked, Archive, Cold Cases. He keyed in a passcode, turned a dial and pulled it open. Inside was a thick black binder labeled case #99-001, Clearwater disappearance. He set it on the table and opened it to a section marked Confidential, Interview Transcripts. What is this? She asked. Nolan flipped through until he found the right page. You weren't allowed to see this back then because you were considered compromised. A parent. But there was a witness. Marin froze. A witness? You told us there were none. She was unreliable. A forest ranger named Clara Dawes. Said she saw the school bus. Not going west toward the park, but east, toward Deadman's Ridge. Marin's heart thudded. That's in the opposite direction. Exactly. He slid the page toward her. The transcript was typewritten, dated 2 days after the disappearance. Ranger Dawes, I saw it around 9:40 a.m. The bus didn't have any kids visible through the windows, but it was the same plate, same paint. I waved at the driver but he didn't wave back. Just stared straight ahead. Investigator, and where were you when you saw it? Ranger Dawes, about 2 miles from the eastern overlook near the ridge. No school trips go that way, it's closed trail. Investigator, did you report this? Ranger Dawes, yes. But no one followed up. I figured maybe I imagined it, but I know what I saw. Marin looked up. Why did you hide this? We didn't hide it, Nolan said. We filed it. And then she disappeared a week later. Marin blinked. What? Her cabin was ransacked. No signs of a struggle. No body. Just gone. A cold silence settled between them. She's not in the system anymore, he added. No forwarding address. No relatives came forward. Just like the kids. Just like Creed. Marin leaned back, the edges of her thoughts fraying. What if the school trip wasn't just a cover-up for a kidnapping? What if it was a test? Nolan stared at her. A test for something bigger. Someone using the school. Using the teacher. Using the kids. Nolan's voice lowered. You're talking conspiracy. I'm talking patterns, she whispered. The room was heavy with the past. Marin could feel it closing in. For so long she had clung to hope. Now she was clinging to pieces, fragments of a puzzle scattered across 2 decades of silence. Then Nolan said something that made her blood run cold. There's one more thing. He walked over to a drawer and pulled out a photograph in a sealed plastic sleeve. It was taken by a hiker 2 years ago, a group of people in the distance walking through the fog near Deadman's Ridge. Blurry. But one figure stood out. A girl with blonde braids. And a bracelet made of colored stones. Marin gasped. That's her. That's Elsa. Nolan nodded slowly. I think your daughter might still be alive. The photograph haunted Marin's thoughts long after she left the sheriff's station. She couldn't stop staring at it, her fingers tracing the blurred edges as if touching it might make the image clearer. Elsa. The same braids. The same delicate frame. The same bracelet of colored stones that Marin had just pulled from an abandoned locker. How could she be alive? The thought shook her to her core, equal parts hope and terror. If Elsa had survived, where had she been all these years? And why hadn't she come home? Marin parked her rental car at the base of the Deadman's Ridge trailhead, a rusted sign creaking gently in the wind. The sky overhead was choked with dark clouds, and the air smelled of moss, pine, and a coming storm. This was where the ranger had last reported seeing the school bus. This was where the photograph had been taken. She slung a small pack over her shoulder, water, flashlight, notebook, a sidearm she'd recertified to carry again 2 years ago, just in case. She hadn't needed it since then, but something about this case made her fingers rest on it more than once. The trail was overgrown, forgotten. No hikers came here anymore. The town had closed this part of the forest a decade ago due to unstable rock formations, but the real reason was whispered in bars and backyards. Strange sightings, eerie noises, and people claiming to see children standing motionless at the tree line, staring. Marin pushed forward through the brush, the trees closing in tighter with every step. 30 minutes in she stopped. There were footprints in the soft mud. Not from animals. Not from boots. Barefoot. Small. Like a child's. She knelt inspecting them. The toes were splayed slightly, there was no sign of dragging or shuffling. Whoever made them had been walking calmly. Recently too. The prints were still wet from the rain. She followed the trail deeper, branches whipping against her coat, the wind whispering through the trees like voices just out of reach. The farther she went, the more the forest changed. The sounds of birds faded. Even the insects seemed to disappear. An unnatural stillness settled over everything. Then she saw it. A clearing. And in the center of it, hidden beneath years of vines and leaves, was a structure. Not large, perhaps the size of a garage. Made of concrete, partially buried into the hillside. A door of rusted metal was set into the earth. It looked like a storm shelter or maybe a military outpost from a long-forgotten era. No markings. No lights. No sounds. Marin's heart pounded. She stepped closer, flashlight in hand, and brushed away the moss that covered the door. Her beam caught on something carved into the metal. A symbol. A bell inside a circle, surrounded by 22 small dots. Her stomach turned. 22 children. She reached for the door handle. It was stiff but not locked. With a grunt, she pulled, the hinges groaning in protest. The door opened into darkness. She aimed her flashlight into the void. Concrete walls. A tunnel. Narrow and cold. She hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside. Each footstep echoed like a drumbeat. 10 steps. Then 15. Then the hallway opened into a chamber. And she saw them. Beds. Small beds. Dozens of them. Metal frames, stripped mattresses. Toys scattered. Crayons. A faded poster on the wall. Be brave. Be good. Be quiet. Marin's breath caught in her throat. This had been a holding place. A dormitory. Underground. Hidden. She moved through the room slowly, eyes wide, heart thudding. In the corner she found a metal cabinet. Inside were dozens of files, old, water-damaged but still legible. Names. Elsa Voss. Audrey Moreno. Jackson Lee. Clara Canning. All names of the children who had disappeared. Beside each name was a code, A1, B3, B4, and so on. Marin flipped to Elsa's page. Subject code, A1. Status, deemed unstable. Administered sedative protocol. Response inconsistent. Scheduled for relocation, October 6, 2000. Final note, transport failed. Subject presumed deceased. Marin's knees nearly buckled. Presumed deceased. But she had seen Elsa in the photo. She had seen the bracelet. Someone had lied. Suddenly behind her, a faint noise. She turned sharply. Footsteps. Not loud. Not fast. Barefoot. Small. Her flashlight flicked toward the hallway, catching only dust and empty air. Then, a shadow moved at the corner of her vision. Too quick to be imagination. Something was down here. She stepped backward toward the exit, her hand resting on her gun. Elsa? She called out, voice cracking. No reply. Elsa, it's me. Mom. Silence. Then a whisper. Not from her imagination. Not from memory. Real. It came from just beyond the tunnel wall. You're not supposed to be here. Marin froze. The voice wasn't Elsa's. It was young. Fragile. But male. Another child? She stepped toward the wall, running her hand across the surface. Her flashlight caught a seam, a hidden door built into the concrete. She pressed against it. Nothing happened. Then, another whisper, this time from behind her. You should go before she comes. Marin turned. And saw him. A boy. No older than 12. Thin. Dirty. Dressed in old clothes, Clearwater Academy uniform faded nearly to gray. His eyes were too calm, too still for a child. Who's she? Marin asked. He didn't answer. Just pointed toward the ceiling. She hears everything, he whispered. And then he was gone. Just like that. Vanished into the darkness. Marin stood in the center of the room, heart pounding, mind reeling. The children hadn't just vanished. They had been hidden. Used. And someone, or something, was still watching over them. The wind howled above the hidden chamber like a beast circling its prey. But down below, beneath layers of soil and stone, Marin stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. The boy had vanished. No footsteps. No door opening. Just gone. And in his place, silence settled like a weight across the room. Marin slowly turned her flashlight toward the hidden door again, the seam embedded in the concrete wall. It hadn't opened when she pushed, but now, looking closer, she noticed faint scuff marks on the ground. Someone had gone through it recently. More than once. She pressed her ear to the cold wall. No sound. Then she remembered the symbol on the door above. a bell surrounded by 22 dots. She pulled out her phone and opened the photo of Elsa's bracelet again. The colored stones, she'd always assumed they were random. But now, looking more carefully, she saw something she hadn't before. A pattern. 6 red stones. A gap. Then 4 blue. Then 1 yellow. Then 11 green. 6 to 4, 1 to 11. A code? She glanced back at the cabinet, then at the concrete panel again. 4 small metal studs jutted from the surface, almost like buttons. Barely noticeable. She pressed them in the sequence. 6, 4, 1, 11. Nothing. She frowned. Of course. The panel didn't have numbered buttons, it had 4. Which meant the numbers were not inputs. They were directions. A sequence. Maren tried pressing the 4 buttons in the following order. Red, blue, yellow, green. There was a soft click, and then a deep rumble echoed from inside the wall. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. Slowly, the hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage carved directly into the rock. No lights. No ventilation. Just darkness. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. Her flashlight beam danced across stone walls, etched with faint carvings, symbols she didn't recognize. Circles. Trees. Bells. Some crude drawings of children. Others of a towering woman draped in cloth, her face hidden behind what looked like a porcelain mask. The tunnel led deeper underground, the air turning colder with every step. It opened into a wide, circular chamber. And there at the center was a throne. No, not a throne, a high-backed wooden chair, worn and cracked, placed atop a small dais. Candles, old and burned low, lined the base. And surrounding it were dozens of small shoes, arranged in a perfect ring around the platform. Maren's stomach twisted. Then a sound. The soft swish of cloth. She spun around. And saw her. The keeper. A tall, lean woman stepped into the room, her movements smooth, deliberate. Her face was obscured by a white porcelain mask, featureless except for hollow eye holes and the shape of a quiet smile. Her robe dragged along the stone behind her, gray, tattered, embroidered with the same bell and circle symbol from the door. Maren raised her flashlight. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice firm despite the hammering of her heart. The woman didn't speak. She stopped at the edge of the candlelight and tilted her head slightly, like a curious animal. "I'm looking for my daughter," Maren continued. "Elsa Voss. She was taken 23 years ago." Still no reply. Maren took a cautious step forward. "I know what this place is. I saw the dormitory. I saw the files. You were keeping them down here." A soft laugh, low, almost melodic, escaped the mask. "She was never yours to keep," the woman finally said. Her voice was distorted, muffled behind the porcelain, but it carried power. "None of them were. They were chosen." "Chosen for what?" Maren asked, eyes narrowing. The keeper moved toward the high-backed chair. "Do you know what it means to be forgotten, Maren Voss? To be erased from the world so completely that even grief becomes a myth?" Maren said nothing. "The keeper Saturday, the children were not taken. They were saved." Maren's voice rose. "Saved from what?" "From a world that never saw them," the woman said, her voice sharpening. "We gave them purpose, discipline, a new name, a new life. Where are they now?" Maren's voice broke. "Where is Elsa?" The keeper's mask turned toward her. "She's beyond your reach." Rage burned in Maren's chest. "You don't get to decide that." Suddenly the air shifted. From the shadows emerged 2 children, a boy and a girl, dressed in the same tattered Clearwater uniforms. Eyes wide, unblinking. They stood at the edge of the dais, facing the keeper like loyal sentries. "You built an army?" Maren whispered. "No," the keeper said. "I raised a family. This is sick. It is sanctuary." Maren's grip tightened on her flashlight. She took one more step forward, heart pounding. "I'm taking my daughter home." "You're too late." The woman reached into the folds of her robe and tossed something at Maren's feet. It skidded across the stone. Maren looked down. A locket. Elsa's locket. She picked it up with trembling hands. It was still warm. She opened it. Inside was a photograph of Elsa at age 7. And across from it, a new photo. Elsa. But older. Alive. Eyes hollow. Dressed in gray. Maren's knees buckled. She clutched the locket, tears brimming. "I need to see her." The keeper stood slowly. "She's not yours anymore." Then she raised a hand. And from every corner of the chamber, children began to appear. Silent. Watchful. Surrounding Maren. Forming a circle. Dozens of them. and not one said a word. The air inside the underground chamber grew dense, pressing against Marin's chest like an invisible hand. She stood frozen, surrounded by children, silent, unmoving, their eyes locked on her with a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. They formed a living wall, their expressions unreadable. Some looked no older than 10. Others were well into their teens. And yet all of them wore the same faded uniform, gray sweaters with the Clearwater Academy emblem stitched in black thread. Marin's fingers tightened around the locket. Her daughter had touched this recently. She scanned the circle for a familiar face, for Elsa's golden braids, for the sharp green eyes that used to light up at bedtime stories and marshmallow tea. But none of the children stepped forward. None of them reached for her. Then the keeper descended the steps of the dais. "You see now," the masked woman said, her voice muffled but firm, "they are not captives. They are vessels." Marin's voice was a low growl. "You brainwashed them." The keeper cocked her head. "We saved them." Marin's gaze darted across the chamber, searching for exits, anything that could break the surreal tension pressing in from all sides. "Where is Elsa?" she demanded again. "Is she here?" "She was," the keeper replied. "But she is no longer part of this place." Marin's heart thudded. What does that mean? One of the children, a girl with short dark hair and hollow cheeks, took a step forward. She looked to be around 13. Her eyes flicked to the locket in Marin's hand. "You're her mother?" the girl whispered. Marin's throat tightened. "You knew Elsa?" The girl nodded. "She was here for a long time. She didn't do well with the silence." Her voice faltered. "She tried to escape." Marin felt the floor tilt beneath her. "When?" she whispered. "4 years ago," the girl said. "She got past the watchers. She made it out." Marin's grip on the locket slackened. "She's alive?" The girl nodded again. "But she wasn't like the rest of us. She never became one of them." The keeper's tone sharpened. "Because she was never meant to stay." Marin turned on her. "You kept her here. You buried her life. She had a family." "She had pain," the keeper replied. "The kind of pain this world creates and forgets. Here we gave her stillness." "No," Marin snapped, her voice rising. "You gave her isolation. You erased her. You turned her into a ghost." The room vibrated with the weight of the confrontation. The children stirred uneasily but none stepped in. "I'm taking her back," Marin said. "Wherever she is." The keeper stepped closer. "Even if it means destroying everything we've built?" Marin met her gaze through the hollow eye holes. "Yes." A long silence followed. Then the keeper said softly, "You're not the first to come looking." Marin froze. "What?" "There was a man," the keeper continued, her tone unreadable. "He came 2 years ago. He claimed to be a father. Of another child. He carried photos like you. Wore grief like a badge. He demanded to see his son." Marin's breath caught. "What happened to him?" "He didn't listen." The words hung like smoke. Marin took a half step back, her instincts on fire. "But I will offer you a choice," the keeper said. "Because you're different. Because she loved you even when she didn't know how." Marin narrowed her eyes. "What choice?" "You leave. No. And I tell you where she went." Marin's mind raced. "And if I refuse?" The circle of children suddenly shifted, closing in. The message was clear. "She escaped through the mines," the keeper said. "There's a shaft on the north end of the ridge. She followed it to the surface but it collapsed behind her. We thought she'd been crushed. But 2 weeks later we found signs, fresh food missing from a ranger's cabin. Her bracelet left by the stream." Marin's voice was low. "She left it for me." "Yes," the keeper said. "She hoped you would find it." Marin's pulse pounded. "She's alive," she whispered. "Where?" The keeper stepped back, the children parting silently to let her pass. She walked to the far wall and pointed to a small metal hatch, barely visible in the gloom. "She fled into the western forest. Beyond the national park border. There's a place the maps don't mark, Crescent Hollow. A community lives there. Off the grid. No electricity. No roads. Just old ways." "She's there?" Marin asked. "She might be," the keeper said. "If she made it. But I never saw her again." Marin hesitated. She didn't trust the woman, but she had no other leads. No other hope. She stepped toward the hatch. But before she could reach it, the girl with hollow cheeks grabbed her hand. "She's scared of you." Marin looked down at her. "Why?" The girl whispered, Because she thinks you gave up. The words hit like a bullet. Marin stared at the girl, then at the candlelit dais, then at the hollow faces surrounding her. I didn't, she whispered. Tell her that. I never did. The keeper nodded once. Then go find her. But know this, once you leave this place it disappears. What? No one who enters twice leaves again. Marin didn't respond. She turned, locket still in hand, and climbed through the hatch. It opened into a tunnel of earth and stone that eventually curved upward, toward the forest floor. Behind her, the metal door shut with a final clang, sealing away the underground world, and the children, forever.
The forest above ground greeted Marin with a blinding burst of light as she emerged from a hidden tunnel. The hatch had taken her out, near a ridge blanketed in dense fir trees. She stumbled forward, shielding her eyes from the sudden sunlight. The weight of earth, stone, and secret chambers still clung to her lungs. For a moment, she stood motionless, listening. The forest sounded normal. Birds chirped. Wind rustled the canopy. The world above had no idea what was buried below. Marin looked back. No hatch, no tunnel, not even disturbed soil. The keeper had been telling the truth. Once you leave, it disappears. She pulled out her phone, but the screen read a no service. Not unexpected. She checked her compass, it still worked, and turned west toward the direction the keeper had indicated. Crescent Hollow, a place beyond maps, beyond law. The terrain was rugged. Roots twisted out of the ground like bony fingers. Thorns tugged at her clothes. She moved through the underbrush with slow, deliberate steps, keeping her eyes peeled for anything unusual, anything human. Hours passed. No sign of life. No trail. No structures. Marin paused at a stream to refill her water bottle and splashed cold water on her face. As she stood, she caught sight of something strange on the opposite bank, a smooth, vertical stone with markings carved into it. She crossed the stream, boots slipping on mossy rocks, and crouched in front of the stone. The carvings were symbols. Not English, not Latin, just shapes, swirls, eyes, trees, and one unmistakable figure, a girl with a braid, walking into a circle of flame. Marin's blood ran cold. She reached out and ran her hand over the carving. Below the image was a set of notches, like a primitive map etched into stone. A faint line ran from the figure toward a cluster of trees etched into the corner. A path? She turned slowly and looked in that direction. The forest seemed denser there, but the trees, ancient pines, were arranged with strange symmetry, almost like gateposts. Taking a deep breath, Marin stepped through. After just a few paces, the air changed. Cooler, quieter. The wind seemed to hush. And then she saw it. A house. Small, wooden, crooked like it had been grown from the trees instead of built. Smoke drifted from the chimney, thin and gray. A clothesline with handmade garments fluttered nearby. She approached cautiously, hand resting on the grip of her sidearm, not out of fear, but readiness. As she neared the door, she noticed something hanging from the porch beam, a collection of bracelets tied together like a wind chime. Among them was one with colored stones, red, blue, yellow, green. Her heart skipped. Elsa's code. Marin climbed the creaky steps and knocked on the door once, twice. No answer. She tried the handle. Unlocked. The door opened with a slow groan. Inside, the room was warm and quiet. A fire crackled in the hearth. A kettle steamed gently on the stovetop, but no one was there. Hello? Marin called, her voice tentative. No response. She stepped inside, carefully closing the door behind her. The interior was simple. Wooden table, 2 chairs, shelves lined with herbs and jars. A pair of boots sat near the door, and on the far wall, a series of sketches had been pinned. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw them. Drawings of a girl with long braids, green eyes, and a solemn face. Elsa. Every sketch was her, in different seasons, different ages. One even showed her in the Clearwater uniform. And in the corner of the table, next to an open journal, sat a faded photo, the class picture, but this one had been marked with red ink. Crosses over certain faces, circles over others. One circle around Elsa's face with a word missing scribbled beneath it. Marin picked up the journal. The handwriting was neat but shaky. The entries were dated. April 2nd, 2021. I saw her again today. The girl from the tunnels. I think she remembers, but she won't talk to me. May 16th, 2021. The dreams are getting worse. I hear the bell at night. I smell the earth. I wake up clawing at the sheets like they're roots. June 3rd, 2021. She came closer. She left me the bracelet. I think she knows I'm watching. I think she's watching me too. June 8th, 2021. I heard someone ask for Elsa. They came through the woods. I couldn't see their face. But they're not from here. Marin's hands trembled as she flipped forward. June 15th, 2021. I tried to talk to Elsa again. She ran. I don't think she trusts anyone. Maybe she shouldn't. June 20th, 2021. She asked me something strange. She said, "Do you remember the boy with the mirror?" Marin froze. That was a phrase only Elsa would know. It referred to a bedtime story they used to share, about a lonely boy who could travel between worlds by stepping through mirrors. It had been their secret. Her fingers closed around the locket. She was here, somewhere nearby. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked behind her. Marin spun, and standing in the doorway was a girl, older now, maybe 16 or 17, tall, pale, eyes wide and wild, braided hair. Tears welled in Marin's eyes. "Elsa." The girl didn't speak. She just stared, as if seeing her mother for the first time in a dream she wasn't sure was real. Marin stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "It's me, sweetheart. It's Mom." Elsa took one step back. "Don't," she whispered. Marin froze. "Why?" "They'll follow you," Elsa said. "They always do." The fire in the hearth crackled behind them, casting shadows that danced along the cabin walls. But neither Marin nor Elsa moved. The space between them felt fragile, like glass stretched too thin. One wrong word, one sudden motion, and it might all shatter. Marin's voice trembled as she spoke. "Elsa, it's really you." The girl didn't respond. Her braid hung over one shoulder, damp with mist. Her boots were caked in mud. Her hands, thin, trembling, clutched the edge of the doorframe like an anchor. "I've been looking for you for 23 years, Marin whispered. Elsa blinked, once, then twice. Her lips parted slightly, as if forming a question she wasn't sure she wanted answered. "I thought you were dead," Marin added, tears welling up. "But I never stop hoping. Never." Elsa finally spoke, her voice dry and cracked from disuse. "Hope's dangerous out here." Marin took a cautious step forward, her voice soft and maternal. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm here now. You can come home." Elsa flinched. "No, there's no home." "Yes, there is," Marin insisted, heart aching. "With me?" But Elsa shook her head. "They followed you." Marin froze. "Who?" "The ones who never left," Elsa said quietly, her eyes flicking toward the window. "You stirred the soil. You opened the door again. Now they know." "Elsa, I don't understand. Who are they?" Elsa stepped fully into the cabin, pushing the door shut behind her and locking it with 3 hand-forged bolts. She moved swiftly, like she'd done this routine 1,000 times. "They were the first children," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before us. Before Clearwater." Marin's eyes widened. "There were others?" Elsa nodded. "Long before me. Before any of us. They lived underground. Grew up in silence. The keeper said they were failed trials. But I saw them. I saw their eyes. They weren't children anymore." Marin sat down slowly, trying to process what she was hearing. "And they're still alive?" "They're not alive," Elsa said, shaking her head. "Not really." She walked to the fire and stirred the coals with a long stick. "After I escaped, I thought I was free. But they followed me. I started seeing them in the woods. At first just shadows. Then eyes. Then whispers." Marin swallowed hard. "What do they want?" Elsa looked at her mother, her eyes sharp and haunted. "They want to come back. They want to be remembered." A heavy silence fell. Marin broke it gently. "You could have come home. Elsa, why didn't you? Elsa's face cracked with pain. Because I didn't know if you were still looking. I was, Marin said firmly, reaching into her coat and pulling out the worn locket. Every day. Elsa's breath caught as she saw the familiar trinket. She took a slow step forward and reached out, brushing her fingers across its surface. I left that for you, she said, her voice distant. I didn't think you'd find it. I almost didn't, Marin admitted, smiling through her tears. But something told me not to stop. Elsa's eyes softened for a moment, but then her body tensed. Her gaze snapped toward the window. They're closed, she whispered. They don't like visitors. Marin stood. Elsa, we need to go. Now. I have a car about 5 miles east of here. We can make it if we hurry. Elsa shook her head. It's too late for that. Once they sense you, they mark you. Marin crossed the room and placed her hands gently on Elsa's shoulders. Then we fight. Together. But Elsa's eyes brimmed with sorrow. You don't fight them, Mom. You survive them. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed from the back of the cabin. Not the front door. The back wall. Wooden. Hollow. A second knock. Louder this time. Then a dragging sound. Marin grabbed the fireplace poker and positioned herself between Elsa and the noise. Get behind me. Elsa obeyed, her body pressed against the far wall, eyes locked on the wooden boards behind which the sound grew louder. Marin crept toward the back, her heart thundering in her chest. She listened. Nothing. Then crack. A hand punched through the wall. Not flesh and bone, but something gray, gnarled, child-sized, with fingernails like thorns. The fingers twitched. Elsa screamed. Marin swung the poker hard. The metal connected with the hand, sending a sickening snap through the air. The arm recoiled, pulling back into the dark. We have to move, Marin shouted. Now! Elsa grabbed her pack. There's a tunnel under the shed. Without hesitation, they burst through the front door into the dust-drenched woods. The air had turned cold. Too cold for late spring. Marin followed Elsa around the cabin and into a slanted tool she had built into the hillside. Elsa flung open a trapdoor beneath an old workbench. Hurry, she cried. They climbed down into a narrow dirt tunnel lit only by a dim lantern Elsa had stashed nearby. Behind them, the trees shook, the wind howled, and from the woods came a sound Marin would never forget. Children's laughter, but twisted, warped, as if something was mimicking joy, but didn't understand how it worked. They crawled for what felt like forever, their breath ragged, their hearts racing. Then, ahead, a sliver of moonlight broke through, the end of the tunnel. They emerged into a thicket, overlooking the ridge. Marin turned back, but nothing followed them. Only the wind, only the woods. They had made it out. For now, Elsa collapsed onto ground, her body shaking. Marin pulled her close, holding her tight. It's okay. You're safe. Elsa whispered. No, not yet. Not until we stop them. Marin held her tighter. Then we will... She looked up at the night sky, knowing the fight was far from over. Somewhere deep in the woods, the ones who never left were waiting. The night pressed down like a wet shroud as Marin and Elsa sat hidden beneath the twisted branches of an old pine grove. The forest around them whispered with movement, nothing distinct, just enough to keep their nerves taut. Marin clutched the locket tightly, its smooth surface warming in her hand. Elsa sat beside her, curled into herself, watching the woods with haunted eyes. You said they want to come back, Marin said quietly, careful not to break the fragile stillness. The ones who never left. What are they, Elsa? Not just children. What are they? Elsa didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered, We call them the Forgotten. Marin looked at her. The Forgotten? Elsa nodded. That's what the keeper said they were. The first ones. The original batch. Marin's skin crawled. Batch! Elsa wrapped her arms around her knees. Clearwater wasn't a normal school, Mom. It never was. The founder, Esther Creed, Mr. Creed's grandmother, she started it as an experimental educational sanctuary in the 1940s. But it was just a front. A front for what? Elsa looked at her mother, and for a moment she seemed much older than her years. They were conducting trials, psychological experiments on abandoned and orphaned children, testing how long children could be kept underground in isolation with minimal human interaction. Marin blinked. Why? Some government project, Elsa muttered. Behavioral warfare. Long-term conditioning. They wanted to raise obedient minds. Minds they could mold into anything. Marin's stomach churned. And forgotten, those children, what happened to them? They weren't discarded, Elsa whispered. They changed. Marin leaned in. How? Elsa stared into the darkness. They lost their names, their memories, their sense of time. The keeper said they began to merge, thinking and moving like one being. No language, just instinct. The project was shut down in the late 50s, officially, but the children never left. Marin's throat tightened. They were left behind. Elsa nodded, and they never forgot what was done to them. And now they want revenge. No, Elsa said, shaking her head slowly. They want completion. Their trial was never finished. They're stuck in it, forever. And anyone who enters the woods becomes part of it, a new variable. Marin felt sick. That's what the keeper was doing all these years, feeding them more children. She said it was for the greater good. Elsa said bitterly that we were saving the world by building better minds. Marin stood, pacing in the dirt. This is madness. Elsa reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a map, hand-drawn on old parchment. Marin knelt beside her. What is this? It's the layout of the original trial site, Elsa said. Before the school was even built. The tunnels, the observation chambers, the core chamber. Marin's breath caught. The core? Elsa tapped the center of the map, marked only by a red circle and the words, Trial Nexus. That's where they are, Elsa whispered. The forgotten. It's where they live, where they wait. Marin looked at her. You want to go back? Elsa's voice was steady now. I have to. I escaped, yes, but I didn't finish. That's why they follow me. Why I hear the bell. Why I see them in the trees. No, Marin said quickly. That's not your responsibility. They did this to you. You owe them nothing. Elsa shook her head. You don't understand. I'm linked to them. All of us are. The children who survived, the ones who got out, we still feel them. Marin's face paled. There are others? Elsa nodded. Not many, but some of them went mad. Others vanished again. I've stayed hidden for years, but now that you come, you've opened the path again. They'll never stop. Marin looked down at the map, her hands trembling. Then we end it. Together. Elsa met her mother's gaze. For the first time since they'd reunited, her eyes softened. Okay. The decision made, they began to move, following the old map deeper into the forest, toward the heart of the trial zone. As they walked, the woods grew stranger. The trees leaned inward, branches like arms reaching out. The fog thickened into sheets that clung to their skin, and the air grew unnaturally cold. They passed old markers along the way, stone statues worn by weather, carved with hollow faces and missing eyes. Marin whispered, What are these? Warning signs, Elsa said, left by those who tried to stop it before. They reached a clearing just as the moon broke through the clouds. And there it was, a crumbling tower, covered in vines and moss, half sunk into the earth, its bell long fallen. A rusted plaque above the door read, Clearwater Research Division, Site B, Trial Nexus Entry. Marin felt the temperature drop further as they approached. Every instinct in her screamed to turn back. But Elsa stepped forward. This is where it ends. They pushed open the heavy door, revealing a spiraling staircase that descended into darkness. From below came the unmistakable sound of children's voices. Not playful, not innocent. A choir of whispers, reciting something in unison. Marin strained to listen. 22 in silence dwell, locked beneath the final bell. Each a name that time forgot, bound in blood and never caught. The words chilled her blood. Elsa gripped her hand. That's the rhyme. They taught us to remember the rules. Marin swallowed hard. What happens if you break them? Elsa's eyes were hollow. Then you become one of them. The spiral staircase groaned with each step as Marin and Elsa descended, the air growing heavier with every footfall. The walls were slick with moisture, and faint whispers echoed upward. Voices layered upon voices, 1,000 children murmuring in a forgotten tongue. Marin gripped the flashlight tightly. Its beam cut through the darkness like a sword, though it barely penetrated the thick black veil below. Elsa moved ahead, her step steady, as if some deep instinct guided her. At the base of the stairs, they reached a heavy metal door. It was dented in places, streaked with rust and something darker. Painted across it in faded red was the same symbol they had seen over and over, a bell surrounded by 22 dots. Elsa reached for the handle. "Wait," Marin whispered. "Are we ready?" Elsa turned to her mother, her face pale but calm. "We won't get another chance. Once this door opens, the trial resumes." Marin didn't understand, but nodded. "Then we finish it." With a deep breath, Elsa pulled the handle. The door moaned open. What lay beyond was not a room, but a chasm, a massive underground space, carved into the earth like a temple. In the center stood a stone platform shaped like a bell, cracked and weathered. Around it, 22 stone chairs, small child-sized, arranged in a circle. Each one was occupied by children, or what had once been children. Their skin was gray, cracked like old porcelain. Their hair hung in brittle strands. Their eyes were black, depthless. They didn't move, didn't breathe, but they watched. All 22 turned their heads in unison as Marin and Elsa stepped inside. Marin gasped, instinctively backing against the wall. Elsa stood firm. "They've been waiting," she said, "for someone to return. Someone who remembers the rhyme. Someone who escaped." "Elsa," Marin whispered, "what are they?" "They're the embodiment of unfinished memory," Elsa said. "They can't pass on. They can't grow. They're stuck in the final phase of the trial, until someone completes it." Marin's voice shook. "And how do we do that?" Elsa stepped toward the stone bell. "We face them. One by one. We remember them." As she moved, the air vibrated. One of the stone children stood. Its mouth opened slowly, and from it came a voice, high, warbled, echoing with a dozen tones. "I am Daniel. I was 6. I like space. I cried on day 3. Elsa looked into its empty eyes. "I remember you, Daniel. You used to draw rockets on the walls." The figure blinked. Then it sat. Another rose. "I am Lacey. I was 5. I liked red. I asked for my mom." Elsa's voice cracked. "You braided my hair once. You said it made me look like a forest fairy." The girl's face twitched, then softened. She sat. Marin stood frozen, tears streaming. One by one, they rose. Each told their name. Each recited a fragment of who they were. And each time, Elsa answered, not with facts, but with memories. Real, fragile, imperfect memories. Because in the world of the forgotten, memory was identity. When the last child stood, Marin stepped forward before Elsa could speak. "I am Jonah. I was 7. I was scared of the dark." Marin knelt. "You held Elsa's hand when she couldn't sleep. She told me. She said you were brave even when you were scared." Jonah blinked. Then he smiled. And slowly, the circle of children began to glow, a soft light emanating from their chests, spreading through the chamber. The bell at the center rang once. Then again, a third time, clear, deep final. And then the children vanished, not into smoke or shadow, but into light. Marin collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed. The weight of 2 decades of grief poured out in gasps. Elsa knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's done," she whispered. "The trial is complete." But even as those words left her mouth, something shifted in the room. The chamber rumbled. Cracks split across the stone floor, and from behind the platform, a figure emerged, tall, rigid, wrapped in cloth, a porcelain mask covering her face. The keeper. But this one wasn't the woman from the forest. This keeper was older, darker, timeless. Her voice echoed across the stone. You presume completion? Elsa stood, trembling. We remembered them. We freed them. No, the keeper said. You only freed yourselves. The trial was never for the children. Marin's heart dropped. Then who was it for? The keeper raised a hand, and behind her, the stone began to melt away, revealing a second circle, smaller. Inside it were parents, men and women, suspended in glass coffins, their faces serene, their bodies untouched by time. And at the center, Mr. Creed, the teacher who vanished with the children. Marin's blood ran cold. The keeper said they were the final variable. They remained behind to preserve the cycle. You broke it. Elsa stepped forward. Then end it. I can't, the keeper replied. Only blood can break blood. Elsa turned to Marin. We have to destroy the bell. Marin stared at the great stone structure. How? Elsa pulled something from her pocket. The lighter. Old. Rusted. Still engraved with her initials. E.V. You said once that fire purifies, she whispered. Then she flicked the lighter. The flame caught the edge of her coat, soaked with lantern oil. No, Elsa! Marin cried, lunging forward. Elsa turned, eyes wet. It's okay, Mom. I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. She pressed herself against the bell as the fire grew, her arms wrapped around the stone. The flame roared. The keeper screamed, and the chamber collapsed into light. The world burned white. Then, silence. For a long time, Marin thought she might be dead. The searing light, the deafening crash. The scream of the keeper still echoed in her bones. But then came breath, shallow, stuttering. Hers. She opened her eyes. The stone chamber was gone. The bell gone. The chairs. The children. The keeper. All of it gone. She lay in a clearing. Forest canopy above. Birds chirped in the trees, as if nothing had happened. The morning light filtered through the branches, soft and golden. It was over. She sat up slowly, body aching from the blast. The forest around her was quiet, still, and empty. Elsa, she rasped. Her heart pounded. She turned in every direction, eyes scanning for movement, for a braid, for a whisper, for any sign. But there was nothing, just fallen leaves and broken branches. She staggered to her feet. Elsa, she screamed, voice cracking with raw desperation. Elsa! Silence answered. Her legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees, fists clenching into the soil. No, she whispered. Please, no. She didn't come all this way to lose her now. Not after finding her. Not after holding her. Not after seeing the light return to her daughter's eyes. But then something stirred. A gentle breeze, and with it a sound, not a voice, a chime, soft, hollow, familiar. Marin turned. Just a few feet behind her, resting gently atop a moss-covered log, was a locket, Elsa's locket. It was open. One side still held a photo of young Elsa, but the other side now contained a new image. Marin gasped. It was Elsa, older, just as she looked now, but smiling. Peaceful, her eyes no longer haunted, but calm, a hint of light behind them. And below the photo was a single handwritten word, free. Marin pressed a locket to her chest. Her tears came quietly this time. No sobs, no screaming, just release. Elsa was gone, but she had saved them all. Not just the forgotten, not just the other survivors. She had saved herself. And maybe, in some small way, Marin too. Hours later, Marin stood at the edge of the trail, leading back to the ranger station. A fresh path had opened, one that hadn't existed before. It cut cleanly through the forest as if carved by something ancient or newly freed. She looked back once, at the place where the bell had stood, where her daughter had burned away the ghost of a generation, and whispered, I remember you, Elsa, always. Then she walked away. 6 months later, New Haven, Connecticut. A memorial service was held in a small chapel near the university, organized by the families of the children who had vanished all those years ago. For the first time, they had answers. Closure. Elsa's name was added to the plaque alongside the others. Not under missing, but under remembered. Marin stood before the plaque, her hand tracing each engraved letter. The room was quiet, filled with parents, siblings, teachers, some of them survivors of the ripple effect of Clearwater's secrets. At the end of the service, Officer Jensen approached her. He looked older, more tired, but there was a lightness in his eyes. "You really did it," he said softly. "You tore the veil off something that's haunted this town for decades." Marin nodded. "I didn't do it alone." He handed her a folder. "We tracked down one more survivor, a boy named Theo. He'd been living in a commune in South America. Said he escaped the border transport thanks to a girl with braids who distracted the guards." Marin felt her breath hitch. "Elsa," she whispered. Jensen smiled gently. "I'd say so." She clutched the folder close to her chest. Before leaving the chapel, she returned once more to the plaque. She took out the locket, still warm from her touch, and placed it gently at the base. "Your name lives," she whispered. "You were never forgotten." As she stepped outside, the sun broke through the clouds, warming her face. And somewhere, in the hush between wind and leaf, she thought she heard it again. A single, clear chime, like a bell, like a promise.